Dunchbags, what's going on? It's Landon Remixes here, and it is time for my review of this new EP from Apashe called Requiem. Apashe is a Belgian DJ and producer who I personally didn't really give the time of day to until recently. He was always kind of a name that I saw floating around the internet, but never really felt like I had a reason to go check out his music, at least not until he released his debut album Copterboy last year. I had actually originally planned to do a full review of that album, but like a lot of electronic dance music albums lately, I didn't really have a strong opinion on it either way, so it ended up getting tossed into my rapid fire reviews series. And I was kind of quick to dismiss the album for just simply not doing anything that groundbreaking. There weren't really a ton of tracks on that album that really captivated me in a meaningful way, at least not in the kind of way that made me want to check out Apashe's old releases or even pay attention to his upcoming stuff. But for whatever reason, the announcement of this Requiem EP actually did manage to catch my attention. If I'm being totally honest, my first run through this EP, really the only thing I got from it is that the very first song on the EP, Majesty, has a lot of compositional similarities to Flume's You and Me remix, and then in the drop to Skrillex's Cinema remix. Didn't really think much else of this EP, at least not until the That Was Mozart sample in Lacrimosa kind of came in and caught my ear. After that, the gears in my head started turning a little bit, and upon further investigation, I realized that this EP is in fact a Mozart remixes project. Now, specifically, according to Apashe, what he kind of wanted to do with this EP was see what Mozart's Requiem in D minor would sound like if it was turned into a banger, but in reality, I think that's a really oversimplified way of putting it, because to me, this EP is really so much more. There really is a certain element to this EP that makes it feel less like a Mozart remixes project and more like a collection of originals that pays tribute to Wolfgang Amadeus. And I think a big part of why it feels so natural is because, well, it is. Rather than taking the easy route and just sampling an already existing recording of Mozart's Requiem, Apashe goes through the stress of actually doing original recordings for all of this. Although I kind of feel bad for him, I think it's so cool that Apashe traveled around to these different cathedrals, recorded different violins and organs just to give this EP just the right sound. And needless to say, I think he succeeded, because after about 3 weeks of me jamming to this EP and about nothing else, I still can't get enough of it. Now, first of all, in the context of every electronic music album, EP, and even single I've ever listened to, I don't think I've ever heard anything quite like this. I guess there was Wolfgang Gartner, who did Wolfgang's Fifth Symphony in 2009, but even then, that was an electro house remix, and it was a remix of a Beethoven song, not Mozart. In fact, in all my research leading up to this review, the only artist who I could find who has kind of tried this concept before is Apashe himself. I found out that in 2015 he actually released a collaboration with the Trickas entitled Trap Requiem, and that was kind of a less fleshed out version of what we get on this EP. And then he also had the final track on Copterboy, The Landing, which I think in large part kind of points toward this EP. Now, being that Apashe chose to sample what is literally one of the most critically acclaimed musical works of all time, this EP could have gone one of two ways: really great for him or really bad. But I myself do think it worked out mostly in his favor. In my opinion, Apashe does a very good job of not completely overusing the Mozart samples. In fact, he only samples one section out of the 8 that the Requiem is split into, and only 3 subsections out of that sequence. Those, of course, being Dies Irae, Rex Tremendi, and Lacrimosa, which 2 of those actually keep their original names when coming back onto this EP. I wish, though, that for consistency's sake, Apashe would have just named Majesty Rex Tremendi Majestatis, or just simply Majestatis, but he didn't, and I really can't do anything about it. Moving on though, the track Majesty ends up being the one to actually kick off the EP, which, if you're really familiar with the Requiem, is a little bit odd because it's the second of the 3 to appear in the sequence, but it's not super important, and in fact I prefer this track in the first spot rather than the second anyway. Come to think of it, I don't actually think this EP would have had as great of a flow as it does if it would have started out with Black Prez's kind of uninterested, disconnected vocals. And that's not to say that I thought Black Prez's appearance was particularly bad. In fact, I think it's very good when taken into context of Dies Irae. I just think that Wasiu sets the stage really nicely for this EP with all of his references to the throne, royalty, you know, Majesty, and even Mozart himself that I think parallel the time period that the composition was written in really nicely. There is a lot to love about Majesty though, beyond just the verses. In fact, I think the appearances from the MCs serve a little bit more to kind of accentuate what Apashe's trying to do with the production here, to kind of take Mozart's sound and translate it to a millennial audience. So while Wasiu's appearance does add a certain layer of depth to Majesty that wouldn't have been there otherwise, there are a lot of other layers too to dig into. One of my favorite layers actually being the organ, which has these really nice 16th note pulses, which are just absolutely epic. I think the little choir vocal chops on this song are absolutely fantastic, and then I really love the kind of future bass flair that Apashe throws on the little last drop of this song. Similarly, the instrumental on Dies Irae is equally, if not even more, fantastic. There's a little bit more going on here in the way of Mozart's composition than on Majesty. There's a lot more options as to what you can kind of pay attention to in this song, although I'd say my favorite part of it is just those super speedy violin swipes, which is probably why my favorite part of the song is that little section going into the second drop where it's just kind of the violins isolated, and then there's a 4 on the floor beat and a kind of an electro bass line backing it. Now, I really did love both of those tracks, kind of for different reasons, but even so, I don't think they really come close to touching Lacrimosa. I really do feel like I can comfortably say this is my favorite trap song to have ever released. This track is really a bit of an experience in itself, so I don't want to give too much away, but I will say it is very hauntingly epic. Like, the purpose of a Requiem is supposedly to help the souls of the dead rest, but this song is gonna do anything but accomplish that. Play this loud enough and I'm pretty sure the souls of the dead are gonna start headbanging. Other great things about this track, I think it probably has the best build-up I have ever heard, like ever, and then it also does a really impressive switch from 12/8 time into 4/4, which is really cool. And yeah, other than that, I'm going to leave it up to you to enjoy the experience for yourself. I can promise you this one is worth it. All in all though, yeah, this EP is really great. Apashe pulled off a concept that I could have never really imagined myself, and really blew my expectations around almost every corner. Really the only negative things I have to say is, like I said, Black Prez sounds a little bit uninterested at the beginning of his verse, and then the parallels to Skrillex on Majesty are a little bit too there for me to completely ignore. But other than that, I think this EP is essentially perfect. Like, this one is by far my favorite EP of the year, and it might even top all of last year's EPs too. I mean it. Needless to say, I am very excited to go back through the rest of Apashe's discography and kind of listen with new ears, thanks to this glorious EP. For the Requiem EP, I am probably feeling a strong 9 to a light 9.5 out of 10. As always, I have the Spotify link down in the description below if you guys want to check this one out, and I would highly, highly suggest you do. And if you have listened to this one already, let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Anyway, I'm Landon Remixes, hope you guys enjoyed this review, and I'll catch you later. Peace.